Roxo Media House.
Welcome back to FORTitude, JW Brenton. Today on the show, we got a legend, Brenton. The guy sitting between the two of us, man that needs little introduction. We'll do it anyway. Mr. Hal Harbuck. Welcome to the show,
What's
Hal.
the J stand? Do we call you Dr. J on the show here? What do we call you here?
Well, thanks, J-Dub. No, I tell you, Hal Jay is a semi-real name. Of course, the real name is Hal Harbuck. But when I got into radio in 1960,
yeah.
I'm going to say 1969, up in Liberal, Kansas. I moved up there during my high school years to live with my father.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the manager of a radio station. Plus, in those little towns, the manager also has a radio show.
Mm-hmm.
And he was on the air one day and did his part, and one of the disc jockeys didn't show up. He says, you got to do this. Yeah. I said, I don't know how to do this. He goes, I'll show you. Just spin records and give the time and, things like that. I said, okay. Well, the next day, the disc jockey didn't show up. So this led to, some part-time stuff. And then it got to the point where I was doing it all the time, and I kind of fell in love with it. And if I knew, and when I knew I was going to want to do this, I moved back down from Liberal, Kansas, back to my hometown of Fort Worth, and try to get it in a major market, and that happened. And then we went. Ann and I went to Memphis. We got married and went to Memphis, and then back to Fort Worth.
But the J is like a
J.
DJ.
I got sidetracked. So the J, my name is Hal Harbuck Jr. And it messed up people with two Hal Harbucks on the radio.
Right.
He said, your name is Hal J now. The J stood for Junior. So that's how I kind of got the name. That's how I got the name.
And you came out, honestly, your father was a disc jockey as well, right?
Yes. He was a salesman, disc jockey. In those little towns of 16,000 people, you kind of do everything.
What records were you spinning on that first time?
Oh, that
around?
was back in the days of
country?
Oh, yeah. All country. All pure country. Not like it is today.
No.
And I'm not cutting down today's country, but it's completely different.
Like that
country.
West Coast country?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of those guys.
Well, while you're thinking, let me set the table real quick.
Okay.
So for those of you who don't follow along with what Mr. Harbuck is telling us, he's a longtime radio host on the station WBAP. 4 decades worth.
42 years.
42 years. And before that, you mentioned Liberal, Kansas.
Yeah.
Those that don't know who he is probably don't know much of anything, likely. He's been around. He's a hell of a guy. He's a friend. And you're loved. You know a lot of things for other people, which we're grateful for.
Well, you're very kind to say that.
We're going to get into your radio here in a little bit, but before we do that, something major has happened in your life. We'd like to talk about that. I think you can agree with that. But you are almost the 2-month recipient of a brand new heart.
April the 4th will be the 2-month date of receiving the heart. And here I am sitting with you. I got cleared to drive last Saturday, and I hadn't driven since October, just so you'll know. That's another story. But so I got cleared to drive, and both Ann and Carter, they both, you're going too fast. You're going too fast. Take it easy. And, the doctors told me, the surgeons and everybody at Baylor Scott and White said, you'll know when your heart tells you to slow down and your body tells you. And it does, But I make myself get up and try to and do almost everything I can myself, because I'll tell you, J-Dub, Ann was the caregiver. Oh, she's been through a lot more hell than I have.
Yes, sir.
Oh my gosh.
Well, Hal, let's start like this. Let's tell the story so people can understand. But you suffered from congestive heart failure for a while, right?
A long time. Back 17 years ago, I had a heart attack.
Okay.
Did your dad have heart issues, or did anybody? Mom? No.
That's my cardiologist says, well, congratulations, you're the first with heart disease.
Yeah.
But this was 17 years ago. I was out at Possum Kingdom. And my daughter-in-law and I just got through riding Big Mabel. That's really strange to say, isn't it?
Yes.
What? Was it a horse?
No, Big Mabel's a float.
Oh,
where
yeah.
You pull behind the boat.
Oh, yeah.
Henry and I just got through riding that, and I was walking back to the house, and I felt this pain. And I thought, oh, no, not now. And sure enough, Josh was out there. He got me in the car, and we met an ambulance coming from Mineral Wells on Highway 80. And we pulled over. I got in the ambulance. We went into Mineral Wells, into Pinto General Hospital, and Dr. John Jones and his staff met me there. Got out, got into the emergency room, and the questions began. He says, "Your name, please?" I said, "Hal Harbuck." He goes, "Do you know where you are?" I said, "Yes, I'm in Mineral Wells." He goes, "Are you in any pain?" "No, I'm not at all." "Do you know what happened to you?" I said, "Well, I believe I've had a heart attack." He goes, yes. He goes, "Now then, do you eat healthy?" I said, "Nah." He goes, "Do you smoke?" I said, "No, sir." I said, have you ever smoked?" I said, "Oh, yes." He goes, "When did you quit?" I said, "About 30 minutes ago." and everybody in the emergency room started laughing. I said, hey, come on, back here we go. And so that was the beginning of it. And care flighted to Plaza Medical Center in Fort Worth, where I met 3 doctors that saved my life: Dr. Syed Shah, Dr. Lon Walder, and Dr. Todd Gray. And those 3 men got together and saved my life. Dr. Shaw put a couple of stents in me, and or Dr. Walder did, and that's the history of it. And then move forward many years. Actually, last October, I had what they call a VTAC.
Yep.
You familiar with them?
Yes, sir.
And what's that for? Tachycardia?
Ventricular tachycardia. And, some people say it's a heart attack, some don't. It's highly related, but I do believe it's worse than a heart attack. Ventricular tachycardia, it affected the right side of my heart. I had one beginning of October, and then I had another one in January, and then 2 at the hospital in the ICU at Baylor Scott and White. When you have my heart was basically dead. And
from the damage before, from the 17 years ago?
Well, that's really interesting because my cardiologist, Dr. Shaw, in Fort Worth said, someday you're going to probably have to have a heart transplant. I said, sure, yeah, right. Well, then I didn't believe it. Everybody else knew this was coming. Ann Carter, Dr. Shaw, Dr. Shelley Hall, who is head of the Baylor transplant team at Baylor Scott and White in Dallas. Phenomenal. They all knew it was coming because I'd been a patient of hers. He sent me over there 6 years ago to get in her system.
Get on the list?
Not on the list yet, but to get in their system so I wouldn't be a new patient. Boy, that's great insight, isn't it? Isn't that something? And then it happened. Ann and the family got back from the national championship game Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. And they all walked in the house and hugging and kissing. How was it? Did you have fun? At 7:15, I told Ann, I said, I'm going to bed. I got to get up at 3:30 the next morning, And I turned around and said, I don't really feel good. And I hit the ground. Bam, I was out. And our doctor, Dr. Amber Leslie, lives across the street from us. Her and her husband, Nathan, who is also a doctor, came running over. She couldn't find a pulse. And it went on and on and on. And finally, I came back to like nothing had happened. I was sitting there going, what's going on? And she said, well, you hit the ground, passed out. I said, I'm good now. I'm going to bed. No. You're going to the hospital. Went to Harris. Dr. Shaw found out. And this is why Dr. Shaw saved my life. He knew that he had done as much as he could. He said, you're going to Baylor Scott and White tonight. And I had a transport at 11 o'clock at night to get me to Baylor Scott and White. And I was there for, I guess, 33 days. Most of it, 30 of it, probably in ICU.
Do you remember every day?
Yes.
But they got you kind of on stuff to make sure.
Well, yeah, they do. But I can remember most everything, except for when I came out of the surgery of the transplant.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk before we get into that. Tell us about the phone call, because I've seen the Deborah Ferguson interview. Love Deborah Ferguson. I know she's a colleague and a lovely lady, but that was touching. So please share that.
During this process, when you make the list, there's a couple of lists. First of all, there's a list that they consider you to be a transplant candidate. Then there's the next one where you are a transplant candidate. You make the list to be on the list. I got this, and they told me, they said, no matter where you go or what you do, always have your phone with you because you'll receive a call. And
you have to watch Act as a phone?
I can use this.
Yeah.
But I always kept my cell phone with me. And I said, okay, that's good. Well, I'm laying there in the ICU room at Baylor, and the phone rang, and the young lady said, Mr. Harbuck, this is the Baylor Scott and White transplant team, and this is the call. That's all she said. This is the call. Wow.
As you're there in the I mean, it's...
I'm in the hospital.
What's the diagnosis if you don't get the call? Just wait for more days?
You wait. Well, I was expected to wait 6 weeks to 3 months.
In that hospital?
And without it, though, Hal, the prognosis was grim.
It was grim because I was on what they call an Impella, which I don't know works all the time. And I think Ann said it's not a permanent thing to keep you alive, but the Impella kept my right side of my heart beating.
You know they got those in outboard motors, Impellas.
Impeller. Because I said the same thing.
Oh, you did?
I said the same thing. I said, I've got one of these in my boat.
Yeah. It sucks the water in, right?
I hope it's a lot smaller.
It's the same thing. They drop the R when they get the hard stuff. Make it sound more important.
But that's so true. So I got the call, and then I called Ann. I said, you're not going to believe this. I've got a heart. And she started screaming and crying. And she was in Target shopping for me for stuff. A Fire Stick to plug into the TVs at the hospital. So got the heart, and this was after 10 days, not 6 weeks or 3 months. I got lucky because there's different levels of transplants, at least for heart. There's 1 through 7. If you're on level 1, you're really, really bad sick. I mean, it's dangerous. 7, I don't know. But they got the Impella in me, and then they moved me back down to a level 4. Well, at level 4, you can go home. And in fact, the day I had that final VTAC, that day I had another. That's when I had the VTAC.
That's the
day I was going home.
January 24th.
No, this was. I guess maybe so. What was that day? Yeah, you're close. And after that happened, they moved me to level 2, high up on level 2. Now, it's not Baylor's level. It's a level that's shared by transplant hospitals all over the nation. So you just don't, go in there and bump somebody out, because I would never want to do that under any circumstance. But so I made level 2, which is high priority. In fact, if you're 1 or 2 or 3, you can't leave the hospital. They won't let you leave the hospital. Or ICU, I think.
The VTAC bumped you up to level 2 from that level. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially since it happened in front of them. That was a strange day because at that point, I was holding Ann's hand and looking at her in the face. We're about this far apart. I said, I love you, but I'm not going to make it. I said, I know I'm going to die right here. And she said, no, you're not. I said, I can feel it. And it was strange looking at death like that. And all of a sudden, I got shocked and everything got back to normal. Somewhat. Nothing was back to normal. Still isn't, but it will be. Got back to somewhat normal. But I remember, that day. I'll never forget it because and the thing about it is I was scared, but I wasn't afraid. And to clarify that, everybody's scared to die. But I'm not going to preach, but with God in your heart and soul, I knew that if I died, I'd be with Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about Josh later, you said.
Yes, sir.
I'll be with Josh, our son. So as I'm sitting there thinking I'm dying, the reason I wasn't afraid is because I win both ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If I win, one way I win, I get to stay with Ann and watch the grandkids grow up. If I die, I still win because I get to go be with God and Josh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was win-win for me.
Yeah.
And that's why I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid to talk about it. And, of course, upset Ann and the family. They were troopers, I got to tell you.
Do you, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
do you
go right
think
ahead.
that, you talked about getting the call, you were by yourself in the room like that. You think there's significance in that at that time, your wife, I just, for some reason that hit me, like maybe there was an impact there that you were alone. Like it was a call that was kind of maybe on the divine side, like, and maybe that helped reconcile that or create that.
When you say the divine side, there are so many things I can think back on now. The 4 VTACs. What if I'd have been driving with my grandkids?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Didn't happen.
What if 17 years ago you'd been on the raft when that happened?
Didn't happen. Happened
Yeah.
inside. I got inside. Got to the hospital. And there's so many, I think, divine happenings that if I'm there in that hospital room by myself and I got the call, that's a really great point. Might have been 2 calls combined.
Yeah.
That's really a good point.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So they found you a heart. You're going into surgery. You just outlaid how you're not scared, but we went either way, and that's a phenomenal way to look at things.
Yep.
You wake up, Hal, and it's done.
It's done.
What does it feel? I know you have to get through the grogginess and back to lucidity, but what does it feel like now that you have this new heart inside of you?
When you first wake up after the surgery, and the surgery took place at 1 o'clock in the morning. Dr. Raphael was the surgeon. 1 o'clock in the morning. I was back in the room at 5:30, and he called Ann to say, "Hey, things went great and everything." He said, "I can't talk right now. I have to go do another one." Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
I mean, who do you call? Hearts or us? And hey, ship one more over.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. The donor family. You immediately think about the donor family and the pain they're going through, so I can live.
Yes, sir.
But immediately.
Do you know anything about them
Not
yet?
yet.
Will you at some point?
I'm going to try. The hospital said, give it, 6 months or so.
Right.
And
but you know the name of the person it came from?
I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And they won't tell you.
When they do the heart, do they stick that thing in? They sew all the pipes, all the.
I guess so. I guess so. I had a defibrillator.
I was just thinking of a plumb. We had a
Pretty
main
sure they
line
do all
break
the
on the
things,
street
yes.
earlier in the week,
you know.
and I was just thinking how they clamp that thing together.
Yeah, they replace the gears and put oil and they do all that.
Okay, so waking up. Sorry.
Okay, waking up. I remember briefly, and it was the most miserable thing. By the way, the most miserable thing in the world, I hope it never happens to anybody in this room, is to have a ventilator stuck down your throat.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best days of my life was when they pulled that thing out.
Yes, sir.
And one of the worst days of my life is when they pulled out the catheter. I damn near jumped up to Denton.
We can imagine.
Yep. Okay. So anyway, that's enough of that. It's the truth, though. So anyway, I remember waking up, and I looked up. Thank God. I thank you so much. And then my attention immediately went to Josh.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Josh," and this is all me talking to him. I said, "I made it, so you're going to have to wait a few more years before I get up there with you."
Mm.
And it was almost like I could hear him and see, saying, "That's great, man. It's great." It's a weird feeling of what you go through. There was no near-death experiences, NDEs for me, or I didn't see a white light.
Mm-hmm.
But I could feel the presence.
Yeah.
I could feel the presence of God. And it's a very, very difficult thing to describe. As I told you before, I said, you don't want to tell somebody, well, I wish you could experience this. You know, you don't want to say that. But it's an experience I'll live by every day. Every day.
Now that you're back amongst the walking and the driving, you said, what do you feel like as opposed to how you used to feel? Can you describe what it's? Is it like a fresh battery kind of feeling?
A new birth, a rebirth.
Rebirth.
It feels like a rebirth, a second chance. You know, and I'll never not exercise again. Go to cardiac rehab 3 times a week, and it's amazing. It can be a little rough, especially that first week I went. You do all this exercising, and you'll be surprised how much muscle loss you accumulate 31 days in the hospital, or 33 days just laying there. But
do we ever think about smoking? Sometimes on the days when it smells really good, you know, and the humidity's just right, and that person's smoking, and or is it like I can't go there?
I can't. In fact, at the hospital. One day I was waiting for Ann to come back around and pick me up. We were leaving the hospital. There's a guy outside smoking. And
smoking at a hospital.
Oh, yeah.
It's a kind of a weird thing, huh?
He went outside and he was a patient, went outside to smoke. And I got to thinking, you know, that never used to bother me because I was a smoker at one time. And then sitting there on that bench outside the hospital waiting for Ann, I thought, I'm going to have to ask him to move, or maybe I should move. You know, but by the time I thought that through, he'd moved.
Yeah.
But, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to everybody and say, I did my exercising and blah, blah, this and that. No, I didn't. Yeah. J-Dub.
Yes, sir.
I didn't.
Eating burgers and fries. Oh, it was only 5 nights this week.
Exactly. You know? That's right. Burgers and fries and cherry pies and chicken fried steaks and then go home and sit on the couch. That'll never happen again. My blood sugar this morning was 118.
Is that good? I don't know if
that's great.
That's great. 118. And, it'll spike up to, 2 or 3 days ago, it spiked up to 3-something, which is immediate. I ate something wrong. I ate something
sugar?
wrong. Not necessarily sugar, but the carbs. The carbs, and I do everything sugar-free that I can, but I got to watch the carbs. You know, so I knew I did something wrong, but I'm fighting to get that back down. And
how many energy level? Energy level?
Oh yeah,
better than before.
Yeah, my energy level is good compared to what I've been through.
Right.
I drive myself now. I broadcast from home for the next week. I can walk up the stairs. 3 weeks ago, probably 4 weeks, my grandson had to help me put on my shoes.
Really?
My ankles were that big around, swollen with edema or fluids, if you want to call it that. But to this day, even though the shoes slip on now and everything, the swelling's gone, it's still hard to bend over and tie them because you've bent over and, and you're choking everything off for a moment. But that gets better every day too. So it's all a matter of step-by-step process. Probably take a year.
How much insulin you could take, JW?
I forgot.
On a daily.
A bunch, yeah.
Yeah.
Like as much as him? Like how much do you take?
I take more than him. I'm on a pump, so I take it all the time.
Oh, you're on the pump. Yeah. And see, I may get to quit it.
That's what you said. So
yeah,
this is
I may get to
temporary
quit
thing. Yeah.
What do they do? It's all to just keep that blood sugar level. What happens to your heart when your blood sugar's up? Or it goes super beats, or
I don't know.
low
This
beats?
is a different animal for me.
Yeah,
so
exactly. And I think I have to answer that by saying it's different for J-Dub and different for me. And I work with some people whose daughter has a guy whose daughter has it, and she may be different. Although they're trying to get mine down around. My normal was around 120, which is kind of borderline type 2. And some doctors would say, no, that is type 2. But they want it 100 or below. I don't know if I'll ever get there or not. I just want it back down to where, I don't have to take the insulin or whatever.
Yeah.
But, my doctor in Dallas, Dr. Hall, said, yeah, you may be on this for quite a while, which is just fine with me.
Do you notice you had a Whataburger bag in your hand when you walked in? Is there anything to that?
I did not.
Oh, okay,
Do you know, I'll tell you something funny, though. When you're watching carbs and sugars, You look up all these, you read labels on things you buy. And if you're going to go to Whataburger, we looked up a Whataburger of a double meat with cheese. No lettuce or tomatoes, because I can't have that because they have to be washed well. And you don't know if they're just sitting out in a restaurant.
Oh, really? Why? Yeah, what's the deal with? Because any kind of infection, you're done for.
Exactly. Yeah. There's the autoimmune system is shot. But so I looked it up, and the Whataburger, just the single, was like 40 carbs. I can have 60 per meal. Okay, lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I can have 60. So I told Ann, I said, if that's only 45 or 46 carbs, and meat and cheese have no carbs, you can eat a triple meat with cheese. Now, I'm not talking about calories.
Or buns, right?
No, the buns,
I can eat the bun.
carbs.
Yeah.
The bun is what has the carbs.
Yeah.
And I can eat bread. I had a grilled cheese sandwich before I came over here, which had 25 or 30. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm allowed 60 per meal. And it's quite amazing what you can eat.
Right.
Well, you've lived it your whole life. If you just watch it. And when you splurge, I think that's what I did. I splurged on something. I know what it was. It was a piece of cheesecake. Deborah and Steve took us to dinner.
Oh, there you go.
I ate a piece of
Could you
every
feel
time.
it immediately?
No, the next day I did. I think because my body's just not used to it. And all those meds. I take 15, 16 medications a day.
Yeah.
Well, not to digress too much, let's. Can you tell us? I don't want to ruin the mood here,
Right.
but you mentioned talk about organ donations. You know enough about that now. You could share a little bit about like how hard is it for a person to get a heart, like someone in your situation? Is it always going to get solved, or are there people that don't ever get that because they're not available?
There's people that don't ever get it because they're not available, and time runs out on them, and it just happens. That's why organ donation is so important. It's so important. And 10 years ago, 15, 20 years, I wish I'd have known this. I've always been an organ donor, and the rest of the family is. But, that organ donor, you check it going, okay, well, I'll be glad to do that. No big deal. Well, when it hits home, you realize how important organ donation is. And at the same time, one of the first things I thought about when I got my heart was the pain the family that donated the organ was going through. So it's a two-way street. But if I could urge people to sign up and be an organ donor. And I understand that if you don't, it's because you want your loved one all together and you want to, and I understand that without a doubt. But the organ donation is so important.
Yes, sir.
How old was that heart? Like,
I have no idea.
You ever go?
You probably people bring it home. They're definitely going to take notice. You can't help but notice, Hal. I mean, it's meaningful. People they understand more now than they ever did before.
Well, I hope so, because I was dumb to the fact, organ donor. Oh, well, that's the right thing to do. I'll check that.
Yeah, yeah, but you don't think about it. You ever go through the day and go, I don't know if this is the right heart for me.
No, it's never happened. My lungs are completely clear. I can breathe. They took the defibrillator out of my chest. I don't have it anymore. If I want to climb a mountain, I can go up a mountain. I couldn't go above 7,500 feet before. There's a lot of things I can do. My lungs, and it's strange when they get you ready for a transplant. It's all about numbers. Numbers have to be right. It's not about your mood or what you look. It's these numbers that they compare. They have to be perfect. And so they were going through me, and they did a biopsy on my lungs, and they scraped out. They emptied out so much fluid, and so much mucus is maybe the word, almost jello. I was drowning. That's what I was doing. I was drowning, and it came to the point where the right side of the heart just quit. And so the organ donation part is, is it important? I just can't stress enough.
Well, you think about how many folks, they go through the surgery, they get it, and then it's like it just didn't take. I mean, like, think about the coming out of it. I mean, that's the remarkable thing is you never know.
And they tell you that. They tell you, listen, the heart's on the way, but there's many things that could happen. We could take it out of the freezer or whatever they send it in. I can't remember what it's called.
Like it's a cooler kind of thing, huh?
They used to use igloo coolers.
Yeah.
And they still do. But
maybe they're Yeti now or some kind of change.
They moved up to Yeti. But it's funny. They test everything. And they got my lungs cleared out. They test your liver and kidneys and everything. One of the doctors at the hospital said, other than your heart, you're one of the healthiest people we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice.
I did no cancers, no blockages, no nothing like that. And it was such a relief to hear that.
Yeah.
And the thing about a heart transplant is, or maybe even liver or lung or whatever the transplant may be, you got to be sick enough to need it, but well enough to get it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
surely.
It's really it's a catch-22 type thing.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. That's on everybody's mind, and we're all grateful you're sitting here before of us.
Man, it's great. It's
great.
While
we got you here, and you're a notorious storyteller. We've listened to you on the air for so long, but take us back to your background a little bit, and we'll finish up with talking about Josh here in a second.
Okay,
but
good.
You're from Liberal, Kansas.
No, I'm from Fort Worth.
Or from Fort Worth, but you started in Liberal, Kansas.
Yeah.
That's correct. You moved on to Memphis before you arrived in Fort Worth.
And I lived in Memphis for 7 years.
I know this. You've told me this, but I'd love you to share it with us. You got a little bit acquainted with a guy named Elvis Presley back in the day, or at least indirectly. But can you tell us about the car? And then one night, I know this story if one of your colleagues might have divulged, but you got a phone call one night about. I'd love you to share that story as well.
Okay, those two stories. One night we were laying in bed. It's about 2:00 in the morning, and the phone rang, and it was a friend of mine named Bill Browder. He changed his name to T.G. Shepherd, and so T.G. Shepherd. He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm checking for cracks in my eyelids." "What do you mean?" I said, "We're asleep." He goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "We're over here at Graceland. Elvis wants to know if you guys want to come over and sing some songs and stuff." I went, well, I got to be on the air here at 5 a.m. I said, "I'm going to pass this time. Call us next time y'all get together and do that." And we'll be glad to come over. And I hung up the phone and said, "Who was that?" I said, "That's TG. "What did he want?" I said, "Well, they're over at Graceland having a little party, want to know if we want to come over and sing music." She jumped up out of bed and was rolling hair before I could say we're not coming.
Yeah.
And she was mad at me for 2 weeks. Good God, she was mad. But
did you go over? Did she make you go over?
No, we didn't go. But I did go one time when Elvis was sick. The radio station I worked for, we had a promotion, a big promotion, may have been an 8-foot by 10-foot get well card, and we'd go out on broadcast, and people would come by and sign Get Well Elvis. So we had it all done and everything. And this friend of mine, he's dead now. His name is Les Acree. And Les and I went over to Graceland, and Vestal Presley, his uncle, was the keeper of the gate. He was the guy at the gate. He goes, "Yeah, we've been expecting you. Pulled into back behind Graceland, and Vernon, his dad, came out and said, "I'm sorry, Elvis can't come down. He's in bed. He's still sick." I said, "Well, that's okay. We just wanted to deliver this and make sure he knows how much people love him here in Memphis." He goes, "This is fantastic. He'll love this." Well, Vernon went back inside for a minute, and while he was inside, Elvis's mother's Cadillac was there, sitting out there underneath a porte-cochere of some sort.
You guys are just out there smoking, just shooting the breeze. Just what do we do now while we wait?
And I looked at it, man, that thing was caked with dust. So I went over there and wrote "Wash Me" on the back window. Boy, did that make Vernon mad. He called up the next day and he said, "Hal," he said, "which one of you guys wrote 'Wash Me' on the King's Cadillac?"
Yeah.
That's what he said. I went, "Les Acree." That's all. It was Les. Give him a call. That was before cell phone days. So, here's his office number. Call him. It was Les. And Les was so mad.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
All right, so you're back in Fort Worth, then your WBAP life begins and unfolds for sure.
Well, at first I came from here to KPLX.
Okay.
Yeah, I was the first country program director for KPLX.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so a big thank you to Susquehanna Broadcasting and Dan Halliburton and Larry Grogan and those guys. They brought me home.
Yes, sir.
You probably were around a lot of those country stars and all. Did you ever meet anybody with as much star power as Elvis Presley? I mean, do you think that any of the
it's a different kind of star power. Elvis was kind of mesmerizing. That's more of a living legend.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not even the right word. But you can put Willie up there and Waylon came into the control room one day and tied me up and took over the radio show because he was a disc jockey in Lubbock.
Mm-hmm.
And his wife, Jessie Coulter, came in with him, and all she had on was a top made out of feathers. And every time she'd move, those feathers just go. Finally, Waylon looked at me and goes, "Hey, Hoss, what you looking at?" I said, "She wore the top. What do you mean, what am I looking at?" You know?
And then I think this story unfolded from their WBAP days. What happened with Ronnie Millsap in an airplane? This is something
That's Memphis.
That's back in Memphis too.
We went and picked up Ronnie Millsap. No, we went and picked up Charlie Pride.
Charlie Pride
Flew into Memphis, and Les and I went out and picked him up at the airport. And he wanted to know if Ann would make him, what's that horrible milk? Buttermilk, cornbread and buttermilk. If she'd make him some cornbread and buttermilk. I called her after we got to the station, and I told him, Charlie Pride's coming over for cornbread and buttermilk. She said, "No, he's not. I'm not going to cook that." So we went down to the Holiday Inn, and he ate cornbread. Anyway, so the plane lands. We're there. It pulls up. The back folds down where you walk up to the back, and we walk on the huge poker table in the back. And as we walk up, the cockpit door opens up, and Ronnie Millsap walks out and says, "How do you like that landing?" Well, oh my gosh.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
I can tell you stories of Memphis. It was a
good.
great town.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Great.
So 42 years at WBAP, 3:30 a.m. You mentioned earlier you get up at 3. Is that
I try to leave the house at 3:45. It puts me there about 4:20, 3:40.
How many years have you been doing that schedule, basically?
Oh my goodness. Actually, since probably about 1982, 82 or 80, 82.
Does a human ever get used to that? Or I know you did. You did it for so long.
I don't think your body clock allows you to get used to it. You learn how to live with it.
Right.
And it's, heck, my day's over at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
But you're going into a place with no windows, presumably, like a studio, and then you're coming out when it's daylight. There's got to be something kind of nice about that a little bit, too, or no? It's
what's nice about it is you only have to watch out for a certain number of nuts driving I-30. Mm-hmm. It's not like every other car.
Yeah.
And, boy, are they out there. At 3:30 or 4 in the morning, you got to really watch it.
And as we sit here today, you've outlined your heart transplant, but you're going back to work in 3 days.
Yes.
Actually going back on the air in 3 days' time.
Went upstairs and checked out my equipment at home. It's perfect. Everything was great. The boss said, "Man, this sounds good, but I'm going to start driving back a week from Monday."
And awesome.
It felt so good to sit there and talk to them over the equipment. Mm-hmm. It just kind of gave you a boost like, okay, let's get this started. Mm-hmm. People say, "When are you going to retire?" And I said, "I don't know. I got a 4-hour a day job, and I love it, and I'm having fun. Who wants to quit that?"
Did you know that when your dad had you spinning those records way back when? Like there was just something that hit you like, I think I could do, or did it just
kind
happen?
of morphed into that.
Yeah.
When I got out of high school, I went to the Air Force recruiter and tried to join because I wanted to fly, but I was too tall. Back in those, I guess they make cockpits bigger now, but I was too tall back then. They said no. So I just kept doing it.
You still love it, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
It's a hoot. It's a lot of fun.
Yes,
Look,
sir.
I'm sitting here with you guys talking about it.
Yeah.
Tell us about this guy Josh you brought up a couple times.
Josh was our firstborn. Wonderful young man. Of course, there were times I wanted to take him back to the hospital and start over. Same way with Carter. Both wonderful young men, and we get that call that every parent dreads. So I'll say this right now: no matter what you do, how mad you are, get over it. Kiss them and hug them, and tell them you see them later on in the day. No matter how much they have made you mad. And Josh did the same thing. He was a great father, and I'll never forget the call when we got it. That sticks with you. Mm-hmm. It's very hard on the hand to this day, very hard. Mm-hmm. And Well, it's still hard, but you learn how to get through it. And that's another God thing. Couldn't do it without him. Could not even come close to doing that without him. And if it's okay, I would like to tell people,
please,
watching and listening, if you don't have God in your life, get him. Give it a chance. Just get him. All you got to do is ask. All you got to do is ask him. And he's not going to make a house note for you or a car payment. That's not the kind of things he does. But he will get in your heart and soul, and he will take your worries away.
Right.
And it'll happen.
For those who don't know the whole story, Josh was a larger-than-life guy, gentle giant, but 6 years ago, roughly, he was 36 years old, was killed in a car wreck. Car wreck, Car wreck, and we got that call. And, it was very difficult, but still difficult to think about. And the things that remind you of him and stuff, where you get, those feet, those pictures on Facebook, they'll pop up, history pictures. Yes, sir.
They drive me crazy. But his wife and kids are just phenomenal. His son Hudson is 14 years old, 6'4". Josh was about 6'7"-ish, maybe 6'6", 320, 15. He was a giant man, and he loved everybody, pretty much loved everybody. And of course, I talk to him every day, every day. And any parent that's watching this or anything, they know. And
what do you think about when you think about Josh, if you mind me asking?
The kids. I think about Emery and the kids and how I wish he was here. How I wish he was here to, watch Hudson play baseball or basketball, and watch Harper play volleyball or basketball. And I wish that all the time. And I'll never stop it.
Yes, sir.
It's like, and I'll tell you, like I told the American Heart Association, I'd rather be watching Hudson and Harper or Mary Marshall, our 5-year-old granddaughter, with Carter and Sarah. By the way, we have a 2-year-old grandson named Henry. Or Harry. You're going to have to edit that.
That's all right. You got a lot of them.
We have a 2-year-old grandson named Harry. You talk about the light of your life. Anyway, I told the American Heart Association, I said, I would rather be at a volleyball game or a soccer match than on a beach in Italy watching them.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It's, there's no, you learn after something like this that things are just stuff. If you got God, family, and your friends, everything else is stuff. You don't need it. It's fun to have. I like my stuff. I like your stuff. All these bikes and everything.
Yes, cool.
It's great. It's great. But it doesn't run my life anymore. However, I got another car Saturday. It's a smaller car, but it has all the bells and whistles. And in one of the interviews, if I can go back to the heart transplant, one of the interviews, one of the doctors sat down in my room at 6 a.m. because you're up at 5 a.m. in the hospitals doing lab work. And he sat down at 6 a.m. Mr. Harbuck, he goes, why should you get to live and 2 other people die? Wow.
That was a question. Oh, wow.
You go through psychological question on all of this too. Even Ann did. And I said, you know what? I said, never thought about it, but if you know somebody that needs this heart more than I do, give it to them. Give it to them. There's a 15-year-old out there, definitely give it to them. I said, now who's the second person? He said, the person that would have gotten it if you didn't have it. That's 2 people. And I said, wow. My answer is the same.
Yeah, I
don't want anybody to die so I can live.
Yes, sir.
And look what happened. You got it.
I got it.
And you got somebody telling you, and when you were talking about that, in kind of my feeble little mind, somebody who went before you saying, it's going to be okay, Dad. You know what?
There you go.
You got this. Like, go.
I felt
like
it.
go.
You
I
wouldn't
felt
believe
you
how I felt that.
That's
Have you been
awesome.
through something like that? Have you been?
I've got some stuff,
Okay.
but not.
Well,
but
okay.
you know,
Well,
but
not-
but I
yeah.
learned that kind of here too. We'll talk. But
I told
yeah.
I told the hospital and everybody, I said, throw the HIPAA laws away on me. And if you need to use anything that has happened to me, you use it if somebody can stay alive.
Yes, sir.
I said, I don't care what you tell them. Use it and try to make them better.
I just thought of this, Hal. If you mind me asking, do you know, was Josh an organ donor?
Yes.
He was?
Yes, he was an organ donor.
Okay.
Now, I don't think.
You had to have a big guy to fill with those parts.
But
for
still,
sure.
the thing about it is, we were not notified of him using their organs, of using his organs, because of the car accident. I don't know if that had an effect on the organs,
Right.
or if the death. I don't think you can be dead very long and have the organs still work. You know what I'm saying? If they lay in limbo and there's no oxygen or blood
Yeah.
pumped to them, they die.
Right.
And so, but no, he was an organ donor.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good to hear.
big proponent of it.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, Hal, as we wrap this thing up, we want to go to a little lighter side of things. But one of the things that most people love about you is this crazy, crazy laugh of yours. I don't know. We were
You're
talking
not
about
going
this
to make me.
before you showed up. We were talking about how this might have happened to you, but was it a consequence of smoking or just
Yeah.
the sheer size you are? But
Somebody told me to say it sounds like an air compressor.
Well, it's in fact, it's
Don't bust out.
I can't do
the
it very
heart,
hard.
man.
Yeah.
But it's that. What was the dog's name on TV? The
Yeah,
character
yeah.
we grew up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got it.
He's like the one on
You
the
got
witch
it.
thing. Yeah,
That
yeah,
was it.
And
yeah.
I've had that laugh my entire life, actually.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't start smoking until I was like 8. So, you know, it.
What kind of cigarettes? Just as a curiosity.
What kind of question is that?
I just kid. I got to do a visual.
For our smoking audience.
Camp like
yeah.
Our smoking
unfilters,
audience.
unfilters,
Phil,
or
they were filtered, yes.
Marlboro.
Did that? Did Winston? Did Merit Ultralights? Did?
You did it all.
We're looking for new sponsors, Hal.
Yeah.
That's why we're asking.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that right?
FORTitude, sponsored by Salem 100.
Winston tastes good like a cigarette should.
Yeah.
You know.
That's great.
Yeah, but no, thank you for asking me to come up here and do
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
Before we
This
go,
ain't right.
you getting a lot of heart jokes from your buddies, I assume, like where the heart might have originated from. Any of that stuff's happening?
Oh, and I can't repeat them.
You can.
No, I can't repeat them. But the guys at the radio station give me a hard time.
I reckon they do.
Yeah, they have been giving me some grief over it, and which is great fun. And yeah, they especially Monty Cook. Monty Cook, I'm gonna pound him on the head. So
Well, we end the show
Well, hold on,
each
before,
time.
a
Oh,
couple
sorry.
more. But I know this because you told us, but you're about to turn 70 in a few weeks, right?
Yes.
This is amazing. So we're kind of here to celebrate you and your heart, and maybe your 70th birthday is upon the horizon.
well, that'll be great. Thank you. That'll be great.
So happy early birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And last question before you ding them up is there seems to have surfaced, or at least we know of its whereabouts. There's a photo of you on a Toro.
I'm gonna kill
lawnmower.
Estridge. I'm gonna tell you right now. If Brian is watching it, I'm gonna kill Estridge.
Well, you know where it came from.
That's
So
it. If the police are listening, you know who it is.
Yeah.
I promised him that I would ask you about that. He held me to it, so I made it. Promise that
Why?
I'd do it.
Why? Oh my gosh.
Anyway,
Yeah.
go ahead, Britton.
It looks like
Yes.
Jabba the Hutt sitting on a Toro mold.
I've never seen it. I just know that he's.
We've all had our days.
Yes.
Why can't people just let that
Exactly.
go, right?
Let it go.
look at you now, man.
Yeah.
Look at you now.
I feel good. I feel
Okay,
good.
so-
Still slow, but go ahead.
Best day of your life. Family aside, we've talked through a lot of stuff.
We might
but
know
maybe
this
there's-
answer.
Yeah, we might, but best day.
Best day of my life.
Best day of
without
your
anything with family, no wife,
Oh,
kids,
no marriage or
just
birth?
best day of your
Yeah.
personal life. Yeah.
Best day of my personal life. Well, there's so many things I can say, but I have to go back 2 months.
I think that's got to be it.
I got to go back
Good call.
2 months to when I got the heart transplant. There's been many great days, but this day gave me another life, a new life, because of organ donors. And so I've got to say that,
Yeah.
Well, Hal,
Yeah.
awesome,
This has
awesome
been
to hear,
awesome.
man. We
Yeah.
really appreciate
Thank you so much.
You guys are great.
We've loved you for a long time.
Right back at you.
Thanks for being a good human being. That's the best part about you.
You're the best.
And I wish you back on the air and stay off those Toro Roddy lawnmowers.
Oh, God. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hal. Thank you for watching FORTitude. That's Hal Harbuck. Talk to you next time.
Roxo Media House.